Hola, muy buenas tardes, bienvenidas y bienvenidos a esta nueva sesión de los Foros MUICA de la MUICA 2021. Les habla Salym Fayad, codirector de la MUICA y de la Fundación Atrosur. Y cada 2 años la MUICA es una gira que pasa por diferentes partes del país, trayendo cine africano y tratando de fortalecer estos vínculos que unen a Colombia con los países africanos. Este año hemos tenido muchos desafíos, por supuesto, que todos conocemos y hemos tenido que cancelar o aplazar mejor muchos de nuestros eventos presenciales, pero volverán más adelante y por ahora estamos en el espacio virtual, mientras nos unimos al llamado de resistencia y los movimientos sociales que se manifiestan en este momento en el país. Queremos agradecer especialmente el día de hoy a las personas que se están uniendo a través de las redes sociales de la MUICA y de la Fundación Atrosur, así como a través de las redes de la Universidad Nacional y del Centro de Memoria, Paz y Reconciliación. Y queremos agradecer también a unos invitados muy especiales que tenemos el día de hoy, donde estaremos hablando de afrofuturismo en ocasión de Afrofuturístic, selección de cortometrajes y que son parte del cierre de esta MUICA 2021, de este cierre virtual. Entonces voy a presentar primero que todo a Ibee Ndaw. Ibee es representante de Sudu Connexion. Sudu Connexion es una organización internacional de venta y distribución de películas de África y de la diáspora, creada en 2016 y con sede en Francia. Sudu Connexion también publica Tele, que es una revista de cine panafricana, y lo hace 3 veces al año, y lanza la 6ª temporada de Quartier Lointain, una compilación de cortometrajes que hace itinerancias en países africanos, en Francia y en los Estados Unidos. Y aprovecho también a enviar un agradecimiento y un saludo muy especial a Claire Diao, fundadora de Sudu Connexion, y por supuesto también a Ibee, quien nos acompaña hoy. Bienvenida, Ibee.
Hello. Thanks for having us. And a big hello to Claire, who unfortunately cannot be with us today.
Pero es un gusto tenerte en representación. Gracias por estar acá. Sigo presentando a nuestro siguiente invitado, que es también un gusto tener, Baloji, de la República Democrática del Congo. Está basado en Bélgica, él nació en Lubumbashi, en la República Democrática del Congo, y él es artista, músico y un cineasta galardonado con múltiples premios. Baloji significa hombre de ciencia en suajili, pero durante el periodo colonial y con la evangelización su significado se modificó y ahora quiere decir hombre de las ciencias ocultas y la brujería. Baloji ubica la resiliencia en el centro de su trabajo y su propuesta es la de tener un arte sin etiquetas, sin categorías, un arte de intersecciones y colisiones. Y como músico ha lanzado varios EPs y 3 álbumes aclamados por la crítica, el último de los cuales es 137 Avenue Kainyama, en el prestigioso sello independiente Bella Union. Y como cineasta, Baloji ha dirigido 6 cortometrajes, incluyendo Kanyama Show y el galardonado Zombies, que se incluye en esta selección que estamos presentando aquí en la MUICA, y actualmente está trabajando en su primer largometraje de ficción, Augur. Bienvenido, Baloji. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be with you guys.
Bienvenido. Y finalmente vamos a presentar a Jim Chuchu, que es también un gusto tener aquí con nosotros. Jim Chuchu nació en Kenia en 1982. Jim es fotógrafo, cineasta, músico y camarógrafo. Es el cofundador y director creativo de DESDE, un colectivo artístico multidisciplinar de Nairobi, Kenia. Y su primer cortometraje, Homecoming, fue estrenado en 2013. En 2014, su primer largometraje, Historias de Nuestras Vidas, o Stories of Our Lives, lo proyectamos en la MUICA 2019, tuvo su estreno mundial en Toronto. Se trata de una antología de 5 cortometrajes que retratan historias reales LGTBI en Kenia, donde la película fue prohibida por supuestamente, comillas, promover la homosexualidad. La película ganó varios premios, entre ellos el premio Teddy en Berlinale y en el festival de Sheri ganó el premio del jurado. Jim Chuchu también expone internacionalmente y creó la obra de realidad virtual Let This Be a Warning. Y su último cortometraje, Tapi, fue estrenado en el festival de Rotterdam. Para nosotros, nuevamente repito, es muy especial tener a Jim porque tanto Historias de Nuestras Vidas como la obra de realidad virtual Let This Be a Warning hicieron parte de la programación de la MUICA en 2019. Y ese año también tuvimos el gusto de tener a Sonny Dollats representando al Nest Collective en Cartagena durante la MUICA. Así que, para todos ustedes, una calurosa bienvenida a la MUICA.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Entonces, para empezar la conversación, ya sin más demora, quisiera preguntarle primero a Ibee sobre esta selección de cortometrajes. ¿Por qué Sudu Connexion se interesó por el afrofuturismo? ¿Por qué o qué motivó mejor realizar este proyecto en la 6ª temporada de Cartier Lointain?
So as you said, Quartier Lointain is a short film touring program. This is the 6th season, and every season we varied programmation. One year it's a director from the African continent, and one year it's director from the diaspora. And this year is with director from the continent. And since the advent of Black Panther and the worldwide phenomenon it was like the world discovered the concept of Afrofuturism, and then Africa was projected by this film in the future. And then we saw a whole diversity of other content, most of the time not made by African creative content, but Black people outside of Africa. And so we wanted to wonder and also shown that there are content interrogating futurism, science fiction, and experimental sort of telling the stories of our continent. And this is why we have picked the amazing director that we have for this season, and 2 of them we have today. So.
Y yo creo también que es un momento muy especial para tener esta conversación sobre afrofuturismo, porque Sun Ra, el ícono del afrofuturismo, el músico de jazz norteamericano que produjo tanto en los años 60 y 70, cumpliría años en estos días, y en esta semana se cumple también el aniversario de su muerte. Así que Sun Ra, de quien queremos mostrar una imagen también para rendirle tributo en este momento, lo tenemos en pantalla, es una referencia para el concepto de afrofuturismo. Pero yo quisiera preguntar ahora, tanto a Jim como a Baloji, como creadores, ¿cómo sienten ellos que ha mutado, que se ha transformado este concepto de afrofuturismo desde Sun Ra hasta lo que entendemos hoy en día como afrofuturismo? Si quieres empezar, Jim, tal vez.
I think when I first heard about Afrofuturism, it was very much an African American thing, and that felt strange to me because the prefix Afro to me denoted this continent where I'm from. So I think what has really changed over the past few years has been that there's been much more African voices from the continent speaking to this question of Afrofuturism, which means that then the images and the sounds are becoming much more representative of the whole of what I call the Black nation, rather than the very distinctive American voice. So I think that's what's made a big difference to what Afrofuturism looks and sounds like.
Baloji, ¿quisieras agregar algo al respecto? ¿Cómo ha cambiado para ti el concepto?
I would say that's a very complex situation, but because, like Ibee said, that people really discover Africa perspective in a futuristic environment since Black Panther, sorry, but it's something that exists for years already. I think it's about some writers like Ndeki Okorafor, or people, even writers like Octavia Butler, people like that, been working on this question for years, and it's been present. It's just that the European eyes always want to see Africa in the same perspective as stories about poverties and difficult access to knowledge. And it's just now that we can change the narrative.
Para mí es importante problematizar el concepto y cuestionarlo más que rendirle un tributo. A mí también me parece que el hecho de el fenómeno comercial de Black Panther, si bien puso el afrofuturismo en el alcance global, también lo comercializó. El mismo nombre cambió una visión política. Los Black Panthers, como un movimiento político en Estados Unidos, ahora se entienden como un blockbuster, una película que recaudó millones y que fue un fenómeno comercial. Entonces, a mí eso también me parece importante ver. De alguna manera se puso en el mainstream o se puso en estándares comerciales unos conceptos que eran de contracultura. Y eso me parece importante notarlo. Ahora, tanto Jim como Baloji son artistas multidisciplinares. Ustedes trabajan en diferentes formas, diferentes medios, expresiones artísticas, trabajan con tecnología. ¿Qué nos pueden decir ustedes de esta forma de trabajar, uniendo diferentes medios, diferentes formas de expresión cultural?
Okay. I think it's always difficult to describe how we can go from one discipline to another. I will say that the main element is the narrative, is the storytelling, is what we have to say. And then logically, the way or the art form that you're gonna explain your vision, your idea will come out of this naturally. So it could be a visual project, could be a film, could be a different type of film, short film, animated film, VR film, something that I've been working on also for the moment. So it can change depending on the story. I think we have to be working for the story instead of the format, and instead of thinking like, should I be multidisciplinary artist just for the sake of it? It doesn't matter. You just have to tell the story. That's my only concern, actually.
Absolutely. I agree with Baloji. I think in my early career, I was always, people asked me how comes I was jumping in between all these mediums. And with the time I realized that it's not the medium that's the story. It's a story that kind of shapes itself according to different mediums. And I think we live in a world now where people move seamlessly between these mediums. They listen to music and watch films on their phones. And so the story, in a sense, if you're able to make the story follow them across these different mediums, then that's a much more effective way to communicate with modern audiences.
De acuerdo, y también siento que esas barreras entre categorías y géneros cada vez se diluyen más, cada vez son más borrosas. Y quiero volver ahora con Ibee, preguntándole sobre este tipo de narrativas que tienen que ver con fantasía, con ciencia ficción. Podemos dejar de lado un momento el concepto afrofuturista, pero la ciencia ficción, el uso de la tecnología, de la ciencia, ¿cómo contribuye eso a reimaginar las perspectivas que se tienen sobre África en general?
Yeah, I do. And actually, it's also the idea of this short film touring program, not just in science fiction, but basically the idea is to deconstruct the idea that people outside of African continent can have on the continent. Just like in the previous season, we were doing film that was made in Portuguese-speaking Africa. And so people were really surprised sometimes, like, oh, really, there's people speaking Portuguese in Africa? Or just having also Arabic-speaking Africa, because maybe some people see Africa only as Black people living there also. And since we have been showing this program, I'm most to young people, they are really surprised most of the time. Because it's what the first thing that they say, it's very different from what they are used to see, images that they are used to receive from the continent. So it's like powerful, it's colorful, it's Afrofeminist, also it's satirical. special dedicace to Jim. And yeah, the idea, and also it's like really important, especially now, to see Black body that that are not being mistreated, especially because with all the BLM movement that we have seen, we have been surrounded of images of Black body being mistreated, and it's not new. I mean, if you go back into the history, and Baloji was talking about Octavia Butler, and if in her work she's also talking about the resilience of having your body, especially for the female Black people, having your body use, experiment, or whatever. And so it's also wanting to show to many people as possible, but also on the continent, because most of the time African and Black people are, it's easier for them to see African content at an international event than at a local event. And the idea is also to screen the film in the continent, also to different areas, because what a reality that you have because like Africa isn't a country, it's 54 countries. And the reality that you're gonna have like in East Africa or Western Africa or Central Africa is totally diverse. And the idea also that. So yeah, I do believe, or I hope that we are switching the imagery.
Jim, ¿qué opinas sobre eso? Sobre reimaginar las narrativas sobre el continente a través de estas expresiones artísticas.
I find the entire framework of that troubling, because I don't think if you're living in Europe, I don't think you have to consider about what does the rest of the world think about the continent of Europe. Neither does an American, neither does an Australian, an Asian. It's only Africans who are carrying around this baggage of trying to create representations of their continent that are different from what has been seen, and which there's those narratives about poverty, disease, and war. And so I find that the conversation about what Africa is so basic right now. People are still surprised that Africa has 54 countries. It's not one country. And that means that your artwork then has to, if you want to speak to those questions, you have to take yourself back to this very, very basic place where you're saying that, hi, this is a continent with more than 3,000 cultures and so many languages. And so if you're interested in exploring deeper things about what it is to be a Black person, about our inner lives, about our imagination, you find that you have to go back so much and be like, hi, we are human beings. So I find that baggage really frustrating, because I think Africans and all the countries in Africa have such deep histories and such deep cultures that if the artists from those countries are having to deal with these very basic issues that Europe needs to understand Africa, then you're wasting our time. You know what I mean? We want to talk about the future. We want to delve into our past, and like this whole let's portray Africa differently is such a waste of time, I think.
Baloji.
I just can agree with what Jim and Ibee just said, but I will just add that in one of my favorite blogs is called "Africa is a Country" for a reason, because they specialize in all these American hip hop legends that think it's just one place, and it's resume to this idea that African people and Black people in general are seen as a monolith group of people without having individual and different perspective on things. And I think that will be the core thing to change and to work in our art forms representation. I think it starts with that. It starts with stop showing African only as kings and queen, as some great artists like Beyonce can do, or a movie like Black Panther just show a certain aesthetic that look friendly and nice, but it's more complex than this. And I think we can have access to dystopian just like any other culture. We can have access to Uchronia and just to reinvent the way we treat all our narratives, because we have all orality culture and heritage that's been running into culture for more than 500 years. So we have to keep working on this, but also giving access to different type of narrative structures.
¿A ustedes les molesta el concepto afrofuturismo? ¿Por qué cuando hablamos de ciencia ficción en Europa o en Estados Unidos es ciencia ficción? Si se hace ciencia ficción en África, es afrofuturismo. ¿Les incomoda?
Yeah, that prefix Afro that is appended before the futurism from Africa, it is a worrying thing, because then you're separating our culture and our thoughts about the future from the rest of the world. I've never heard of Cine futurism, or I've never seen that prefix in front of any other kind of modernist thought. And so my concern is why is Afro split from the rest of the world's logic? And for me, that's a sign about how in this world we live in, there are hierarchies of knowledge, which is troubling, because knowledge is knowledge. Knowledge comes from a place of experience, from a place of ingenuity and adaptation. And so when you split knowledges and say this one is higher than this other one, when you say this science matters more than this other science, then you are denying the experience of the people who made that science, who have experienced that life. And I think so my urge is always to resist being dehumanized in this way, being separated from the rest of the human race because of the color of my skin. And so Afrofuturism, I do understand that there are times when that prefix Afro is kind of creating space for Africans to contribute. But that space can also become a box from which the African cannot escape. So I'm very hesitant about the way our things are contextualized outside Africa. It's always difficult.
Baloji, ¿a ti te incomoda el término afrofuturismo?
I totally agree with Jim. I've been fighting with this for years, and also in music. I'm also a musician where we have this Afro-punk kind of label, and it doesn't mean anything except just a marketing approach. So yeah, it's very annoying, but that's what we're doing, so yeah.
Ibee, para ti también. Tú eres parte de un proyecto que se llama Afrofuturistik. Creo que son ustedes también conscientes de lo complejo o lo problemático que puede ser este concepto.
No, I can only agree with what Jim and Baloji says. But yeah, we have to remember that Afrofuturism is a movement that was born in the US at a moment where Black people were struggling to be citizen, just as the rest of the people living in America. And so this was a movement, an artistic movement for them to express the future that they wish, maybe to also rewrite their history. And yeah, it was a place for them to express themselves artistically. And it was a really political movement. And that is also maybe the difference that we have in between Sonra, Space is the Place, and today, which is that most of the Afrofutur, like Black Panther, is not political at all. I mean, if there was a place such as Wakanda, we'd have question for it. Like, where were you all this time? What were you doing with all the knowledge that you had? So the idea of that terminology was also to question it. And it was, I think, yeah, deliberately provocative. So.
Muchas gracias. Creo que eso complementa muy bien las contribuciones de Jim y de Baloji. Y también es inevitable hacer mención a Ndaw Okorafor, la autora nigeriana de ciencia ficción. Y ella se molesta mucho con el término afrofuturismo. A ella le incomoda. Y por eso ella dice también que una cosa es el afrofuturismo y otra cosa es el futurismo africano. Que el afrofuturismo se está hablando de África o de la identidad africana, afro, como dice Jim, desde una perspectiva occidental. El futurismo africano pone el centro, lo que ella llama el futurismo africano, pone el centro en la experiencia de los ciudadanos de los países africanos. Y eso es una distinción muy importante, y ella es muy crítica de este concepto. Y quería hablar también de la realidad virtual. Tanto Jim como Baloji han trabajado el medio de la realidad virtual antes. Y es un medio de expresión que es muy reciente en el mundo, pero que los artistas en países africanos empezaron a crear en realidad virtual desde el origen de ese lenguaje. No están adaptando nuevas categorías o nuevas convenciones que existen en Occidente al contexto africano, sino que los artistas africanos están avanzando en paralelo con el resto del mundo, explorando este nuevo medio de expresión. Entonces, mi pregunta va a cómo encaja la realidad virtual dentro de todo este debate sobre el afrofuturismo.
Wow. Well, the first thing I have to say about virtual reality is that we had the opportunity with the collective to work with it in 2017. But our thoughts at the time were that it was it's still a very raw medium, still very young. But it was interesting to get a chance to explore virtual reality at a time when the rest of the world was also figuring out virtual reality, and that the lessons we learned in making our short were lessons that were useful to the rest of the world in figuring out how to make narrative work with virtual reality. This was new for me because we live in a world where technology moves from the global north to the global south. And by the time it reaches the global south, it's because it's ready for the market. But we rarely get access to new technology. And the same thing is happening with the vaccines. If you look at it right now, Africa is last on every list of vaccines because we don't have the technology. And so it's interesting to me because Africa is also the continent which has so many young people. And it's where all the innovative stuff is happening in terms of social media and what these young people are doing with the technology. So it seems strange to me that you have this huge audience, huge young audience, who are only seen as an end market. Once you've finished with America and Europe and Asia, then now you can come and visit Africa and give us technology. And I worry about that. I think my general answers to the questions today are African beings are human beings, and the way the world works, we are constantly reminded that we are last on the list of everything, and that's annoying.
En Latinoamérica nos pasa algo similar. Baloji, ¿cuál ha sido tu experiencia con la realidad virtual?
Yeah, my relationship with VR is really because I see art as a playground. It always has to be something playful, and I just started working with VR last year, and what I like about it is just another way to tell a story using the 360 angle of the camera. And that forces you to create a narrative that is different, that is closer to a theater play, because you cannot edit. You cut all the walls, so you don't. I did a film 3 years ago called Kenya Show where I cut the fourth wall, and here we cut all the walls, and which is kind of interesting. So there is an immersive experience for the cast that is similar to theaters, so that requires a lot of preparations and a lot of structures. And I think it's an interesting art form for that reason. And I think we just have to use it like this, and not trying to do something as a medium of the future. I just see it as a camera that is 360, which is a huge difference than the usual cameras we like to use. And it is also very challenging for actors. So that's why I'm really pushing forwards with this VR technology.
I will add from an audience point of view that maybe I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the thing with VR is that you can only watch it on your own. You can't have like this group cinema experience with VR, which is a pity, because then it means that you absorb the work on your own. Your feelings are kind of processed on your own. And I find that a little bit, depending on the work, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. The work that we did in 2017 was the kind of work that we would have liked to have a cinematic, like an audience to respond to, because it was a work that asked difficult questions from the audience. So it was a pity that our audience were not able to tell us or show us how they felt. They just kind of watch it and then take it off, and they've had this very private experience.
It's a very happy few medium, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's so, I think, and this is a funny medium to come now into the world when it is said that we are at our most lonely. And then you have this medium that kind of forces you to travel into another world on your own, experience things on your own. I think that's the sad thing about virtual reality. But otherwise, it's of course new boundaries, new experiences, and that's amazing.
Sí, en una conversación con Brian Afende de Black Rhino VR, él decía que la pandemia y los confinamientos se convirtieron en un catalizador para el desarrollo de la realidad virtual. Justamente por esta situación de estar todos aislados, todos en nuestro propio mundo. Y eso me pareció muy interesante, que la pandemia afectó de manera negativa, por ejemplo, las salas de cine, pero está siendo de beneficio para otros lenguajes y otras tecnologías como la realidad virtual. Quería volver ahora con Ibee, preguntándole sobre los otros cortometrajes de la serie de Afrofuturistik. Y luego quiero volver a los de Jim y Baloji. Pero ¿nos podrías hablar un poco de los otros? Hay cortometrajes de Marruecos, de Ruanda, de Nigeria. ¿Nos podrías hablar un poco de esas otras historias?
Okay, so the other film of the selection, the first one is So What If the Goats Die, which is a science fiction film made by Sofia Alaoui from Morocco. And it's interesting. She basically said that she really wanted only to do a science fiction film, so there's no Afrofuturism or whatever. She just liked aliens and she wanted to do an alien story, but also question faith in Morocco, which is not something that is easy to talk about. So the idea to talk of how would you react when your faith is being challenged by some unknown, maybe extraterrestrial forces. The photography is amazing. The film is also amazing. And it was nominated Caesar Best Short Film in France in 2021 this year. Then we go to We Need Prayers. This one went to the market. And I said that actually it's funny because when I talk about the two films, so she said that Sofia Alaoui, wanted to question faith. And I read somewhere that Jim said that We Need Prayer is something that you say when it's just like, this is the last thing that we need prayer. We can only turn to God right now. And so I think it was funny that the two films was just one after the other. And so We Need Prayer is directed by Jim, who's present here, is about a young artist whom, I don't know, the synopsis is like she made us a plan or a scheme to conquer the art world. I think that she's really like super brilliant and just know how to place the the people of the artwork, actually. So it's really short. It's a really short film. Then we have the two first one are narrative. The third one is from Kantarama Gahirigi, is from Swiss and Rwanda, and it's a documentary that was made in 5 weeks in winter tour. It was at art residency, and the subject was to film the city in 5 weeks, and it was 5 persons coming from 5 different African countries. And she was stranded in the city, couldn't find a subject, and all the time she was ending in one place that was crowded with Nigerian people that was living there for several years. And so she realized her story was there, the story of exile and migration and the sense of belonging to a place, and that place being Africa. And so she did an analogy between migration and an astronaut coming back to home, motherland, Earth, after being lost in space forever. Then we come to Hello Rain, which is from Nigeria, directed by C.J. Ubasi, and is an adaptation of a book by Nnedi Okorafor, a short novel. And it was the first time that her work was adapted in cinema. And so she was so pleased to see it done by also a Nigerian author, because she is Nigerian herself. And it's a film that's mixing juju and technology, wigs, and powerful women that qui passent du côté obscur de la force. I don't know how I could say that in English, like they went to the dark side.
Force.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. And the last one is Zombie by Baloji. A short film about strolling in Kinshasa, and visually you have to see it. It's not, I mean, you can summarize it. I can, maybe Baloji will try to, but for me, it's about a man in a yellow coat traveling to Kinshasa and meeting and accounting with different people, and yeah, also a woman with a red dress and a lot of incredible costume, and the music, and that's it.
Y ya para cerrar, quería hacer referencia justamente a eso, a los cortometrajes de Jim y de Baloji, porque son los únicos de la serie, los dos justamente de la serie que no son exactamente narrativos, son como escenas, son fragmentos, y están usando otro tipo de herramientas para cuestionar el concepto. Entonces siento que son más sobre un concepto que una historia, lo que quieren decir. Y creo que los dos tienen un elemento muy importante de sátira. Y quisiera cerrar esta conversación con eso, sobre el uso de la sátira, de la ironía, de la crítica, para hablar de un concepto. Jim.
Wow. Salym, such difficult questions. I think, I mean, like Ibee said earlier about how George Floyd, we've seen such violence enacted upon the Black body over the past centuries. And sometimes, I think even that whole We Need Prayer series that we did as a collective was so much about people laughing in the face of darkness, because sometimes that's just the best way to engage with difficult things. The past 2 years have been difficult for the whole of humanity. We are facing things we've never faced before, and I think it's important to remain hopeful and to remain positive, and to imagine that there are lessons for all of humanity in what we are going through right now. And so for me, I guess satire is a way of pushing back against all these things that I've talked about today, or our difficult histories and our very complicated present. And sometimes I think, just let's make jokes about it, but it's still very serious.
On my side, I would say, in French, we say l'humour est la politesse du désespoir, which means satire, sense of humor is a politeness of despair. And I think that's the way I use it. I think when there is no other emotion to explain what you're going through, then laughing about it and showing the ironical situation, the absurdity of the situation, by taking it in a non-direct perspective. Because for me, this movie talk about corrupt European politician working in the music industry and in most business in Africa, and they've been seen in the film, but there's not the direct message of the film, just like through layers. So there is multiple layers, and the most obvious ones are more connected to dance, to the relationship with social media, with phones. But if you go behind this smoke and mirror, you will see we are talking about somebody called Bolo. That's my real subject matter.
Gracias, Jim. Gracias, Ibee. Gracias, Baloji. Qué gusto tenerlos con nosotros en la MUICA. Esperamos que esto se pueda dar de manera presencial y física muy pronto.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And enjoy the films, of course.
See you. Bye.
Big pleasure.
Bye.